Good afternoon, 4th grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our novel, James and the Giant Peach. Before we get started, you have a quick write. It says, think of your most embarrassing moment. How would your mother tell the story differently than you? Why? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. Our focus question for today is how does his use of changes in point of view help his readers? So when Ronald Dahl changes the point of view, it helps his readers, and we want to know how. All right, before we get started reading, we want to review types of point of view. And so we're going to look at 3 types of third person. The first says the narrator reveals the thoughts and feelings of only one character. The second one says the narrator reveals the thoughts and feelings of more than one character. And in third person objective, the narrator does not reveal the thoughts and feelings of any character. Press pause to write down your answers to the vocabulary and play when you're ready to keep reading. All right, so as we're reading chapters 32 and 33, we're going to be using our CSPS strategy. And then in parallel teaching, we're going to think about the author's perspective. What type of third person? Limited, omniscient, or objective? I'm on page 106, chapter 32. We're going to read chapters 32 and 33. And when full daylight came at last, they all got to their feet and stretched their poor cramped bodies. And then the centipede, who always seemed to see things first, shouted, "Look, there's land below." "He's right," they cried, running to the edge of the beach and peering over. "Hooray, hooray! It looks like streets and houses. But how enormous it all is!" A vast city, glistening in the early morning sunshine, lay spread out 3,000 feet below them. At the height, the cars were like little beetles crawling along the streets, and people walking on the pavements looked no larger than tiny grains of soot. "But what tremendous tall buildings!" exclaimed the ladybug. "I've never seen anything like them before in England. Which town do you think it is?" "It couldn't possibly be England," said the old green grasshopper. "Then where is it?" asked Miss Spider. "You know what those buildings are," shouted James, jumping up and down with excitement. "Those are skyscrapers. So this must be America, and that, my friends, means we have crossed the Atlantic Ocean overnight." "You don't mean it," they cried. "It's not possible. It's incredible. It's unbelievable." We'll stop right there because we have information about the character in this setting. In box 1A, we would write, the insects in James realize that they have flown over the Atlantic Ocean and are in America. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we would write down what James says on page 106. "Those are skyscrapers. This must be America. And that, my friends, means we have crossed the Atlantic Ocean overnight." Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep for the setting. And for the setting, we know that it's the next morning, and James and the insects wake up on the flying peach. And so in box 2A, you would write, the next morning, the insects and James wake up on the flying beach and see land. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. For the quote, we will write down this first sentence on page 106. And when full daylight came at last, they all got to their feet and stretched their poor cramped bodies. And then the centipede, who always seemed to see things first, shouted, "Look, there's land below." Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're going to keep reading at the top of page 107. "Oh, I've always dreamed of going to America," cried the centipede. "I had a friend once who—" "Be quiet," said the earthworm. "Who cares about your friend? The thing we've got to think about is, how on earth are we going to get down to earth?" "Ask James," said the ladybug. "I don't think that should be so very difficult," James told him. "All we have to do is cut loose a few seagulls. Not too many, mind you, but just enough so that the others can't quite keep us up in the air. Then down we shall go slowly and gently until we reach the ground. Centipede will bite through the strings one at a time." We'll stop right there because we have information about the first problem and solution. In box 3A, we would write, "The insects and James are not sure how they are going to get down from the peach." Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the solution. And so, James says they need to cut the strings one at a time. In box 4A, you would write, "They decide that the centipede will bite through the string one at a time so that they gradually land." Press pause to write down your solution in 1A and play when you're ready to keep reading. Let's keep reading chapter 33. Far below them, in the city of New York, something like pandemonium was breaking out. A great round ball, as big as a house, had been sighted hovering high in the sky over the very center of Manhattan, and the cry had gone up that it was an enormous bomb sent over by another country to blow the whole city to smithereens. We'll stop right there because we have information about the second problem. In box 3B, you would write, "The people of New York think the peach is an enormous bomb, and they are really scared." Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're going to keep reading on page 108. It says, "Air raid sirens began wailing in every section. All radio and television programs were interrupted with announcements that the population must go down into their cellars immediately. 1 million people walking in the streets on their way to work looked up into the sky and saw the monster hovering above them, and started running for the nearest subway entrance to take over. Generals grabbed hold of telephones and shouted orders to everyone they could think of. The mayor of New York called up the President of the United States down in Washington, D.C., to ask him for help, and the President, who at that moment was having breakfast in his pajamas, quickly pushed away his half-finished plate of sugar crisps and started pressing buttons right and left to summon his admirals and his generals. And all of the way across the vast stretch of America, in all of the 50 states from Alaska to Florida, from Pennsylvania to Hawaii, the alarm was sounded, and the word went out that the biggest bomb in the history of the world was hovering over New York City, and at any moment it might go off." And so for our solution in box 4B, the people of New York decide, we'll write in 4B, "Word of the bomb spread to the President of the United States, and he sounded an alarm to warn everyone." Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. for the paragraph we would write. How does James respond to challenge? What does his response reveal about his character? And so you would zoom in on problem number 1 and the solution. They're unsure about how to get down, and James suggests that they cut the strings one by one. This tells us that he's a leader in his group